JD.
Hey. We're here. Episode 2. Go FUD Yourself.
You're live.
A little late today because we had a few technical issues, but that's okay. Bear with us. We're going to get it figured out. We're using a new streaming platform, so there's always some hiccups, but all good. So today, February 15th, Valentine's Day, we did our Love Fest yesterday. I saw we had a lot of video Valentines go out to some partners and stuff.
Only a couple of our crypto crushes got back to us, so
that's okay. We're used to being stalkers, where we just send Valentines to random unsuspecting people, right?
It just reminded me of being in elementary school with the Valentines. You have like a terrible pun, you have to hand them out, and then teachers would impose rules about who you had to hand them out to.
Yeah, it reminds me of like my entire young adulthood too. Is just sending unsolicited invites to people or notes to people and just hoping they respond.
Yeah, but you were a promoter. He wasn't being creepy.
I mean, I suppose that's all based on your perspective. I thought I was just being, a promoter, marketer, but
I'm always impressed with the creative solutions that promoters have. Many years ago, like 15 years ago, I downloaded a Tinder account and I had it for the total of a week or something. And more than dates, I got ads from promoters inviting me to concerts and stuff. So they would swipe and match with people, and then they would set up a date with you to go to the concert they were promoting.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you would get there. I didn't actually, one of my friends went. And so you would get there and there would be like 50 women in line, like buying their own tickets to go on a date with this guy.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which kind of brings me to my topic today is critical thought. There's a lot of FUD going around, and we need to be vigilant, and we need to have good creative thinking tools, and we need to have good critical thought tools. I just thought maybe we could kind of explore that. How do you stay on top of it, JD?
Well, we have really awesome people that stay on top of a lot of stuff also. It's a bit of takes a village to raise an aware DeFi participant, if that makes sense. I think, you have to take most things with a grain of salt. And especially in the last decade, I think news in general, but very specifically in crypto, has just become so speculative. And the way that PR works, it actually makes sense how often inaccurate information gets syndicated because you don't want to be late. Everything happens so fast now that a lot of these publishers are just jumping onto stories that, and they're saying, it's kind of like the VCs that only like to invest when half the round is full. They're just borrowing the due diligence of the first half of the VCs. It's kind of similar with all of these news agencies. The problem is that you're getting your major news agencies in crypto, the Cointelegraphs, Defiant, et cetera. Now, not that any of them post misinformation, don't get me wrong. But where those stories are first gaining relevance is at kind of the bottom tier of your news outlets or Twitter influencers or whatever. And so if a Twitter influencer says something and then smaller publications pick it up and then medium-sized publications pick it up, by the time it gets to the Cointelegraphs, it's already been validated. It has the appearance of viral. It's got a whole ton of shares, a ton of comments, yada yada. And I think things can really quickly get out of hand. And a prime example is just how quickly it got out of hand that the SEC had sent USDC a Wells notice also, which has been unequivocally denied by Circle themselves. I'm not sure if the SEC has come out with that yet, but there's some really interesting stuff that's going on, and I think that also contributes to this, how do we critically think about this stuff? And so some of the interesting things going on is there's an interesting kind of power balance, I think, at least from the outside looking in, between the Federal Reserve, Department of Treasury, and then the SEC, and how that impacts, stablecoins, crypto, banking sector. There's no simple answer for it. Like that's kind of the big challenge is how do you enable blockchain and innovation while protecting consumers, of course, and while not allowing unnecessary risk vectors to creep into the traditional structures. The problem with that, because it's such a complex situation with so many different entities involved, is it's really easy for misinformation to blow up because it's very difficult to confirm anything. And everybody's kind of dancing, like all the regulators are kind of dancing. Everybody's treading carefully. And so anyways, I think it's just worth, taking a step back and saying, okay, where did this come from? Where did this information come from? What does it mean? Does it actually impact us? Has this been priced in already into the markets? Do we care? Is it something that has like a non-zero chance of actually happening? If we don't know if it's true, critically, you should be asking yourself, okay, if this was true, would this be a huge problem for us? And if that's the case, then it's worth trying to investigate and figuring it out. But saying, hey, we don't know if this is true, but even if it is true, it doesn't really affect us anyways. Okay, well, then you can save yourself some time. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the things I try to do is remove my political leaning from news when I read it as well. So many different publications, not specifically in DeFi, but across the land, are obviously very polarizing and controversial.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying, does this actually affect me, can be a really good way to look at it, even if it's fear-mongering or hype or something that you don't just naturally agree with or naturally fall in line with that causes you upset. It's really important to say, take that step back and say, does this actually matter to me? And also, what is the validity, right? Yeah. I'd like to share a couple of articles that came out in the last week, actually.
Let's do it.
Yeah, just to sort of like go through our critical thinking exercise. TechCrunch published that the FBI accused the North Korean government hackers of stealing $100 million in Harmony Bridge theft. That is a great headline that I want to click. Right? But there are some really critical things here. People are afraid of the North Korean government. We are afraid of things like hackers. We already don't like the government. We're upset about the Harmony Bridge. So there's so much packed into the title already. I'm not saying it's a valid or invalid article, but you're going to be emotionally charged when you click on that to read it.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it's leading you to believe that in fact has been proven to be the case. And I think one of the challenges with these claims, it's kind of like the China FUD, which has been forever. That China bans it. There's some rumor that China's banning crypto
That's right.
every couple of weeks, right? And then there was the India thing. India was banning crypto every couple of weeks, and that was a huge problem for a while. And now I think it's just the regulatory FUD. And some of it's the thing is that some of the regulatory concerns are valid and things that we all as participants and as builders should be paying attention to.
On that note, it's interesting too. Are they trying to give us context, or is it, hype for a news story, right? So in the same story, just so that we're not like leaving it and people are like, what is this? Whatever the quote. Cryptocurrency companies money for the regime, which sees crypto as a way to evade international sanctions and to fund its nuclear weapons. Last year, the FBI, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, Treasury Department published a detailed North Korea's activities targeted. This is again bringing up lots of fear, right? Nuclear weapons, targeted attacks, hacking, but it's all American claims. And so I would love to know what people in other places think of this kind of thing, right? Do they have the same fears? Are they adverse to it in the same way? Or is this, a targeted article that is actually going to impact me?
So there's kind of this is an interesting one in a lot of ways, because there has been verifiable proof that, certain state actors or state sponsored actors, whether it's North Korea or, in the Middle East or Russia or whatever, those are obviously the ones that are politically convenient in America to turn into narratives. But I mean, globally, I think there is verifiable proof that there has been state sponsored actors or state actors that have, facilitated some of this stuff. Having said that, from a critical thinking perspective, when looking at some of these articles, you have to think, but if there's no way to prove something wrong, to invalidate a claim, then it's a very difficult claim to want to believe because you cannot validate it, right? And so as an example, this North Korean case is obviously a challenge because how can you ever prove that that's what happened, or disprove that that's what happened, unless you can prove who did it, which they don't know directly. And the North Korean government is not going to say a damn thing about it, obviously. So it's one of those things that, like, okay, let's say that it's true. Is there anything we're going to do about it? No. Is there any way to prove that it's true? No. Does it suck that they have the capacity to do that, to potentially fund their nuclear weapons program? Sure. But what the hell are we going to do about it? Like, I mean, other than continue to focus as a space on, reducing exploit and risk vectors as best we can. But with novel or nascent technology, I mean, there's kind of it's a bit of a leapfrog. Like, as soon as you get ahead of the game, then the malicious actors, are finding ways with sophisticated, technology to find ways to, continue to out-compete, I suppose. It's unfortunate, but that's how it works. So that's actually a really good article. And we can post the links to some of these articles. Yeah, just so people can see. But
one of the things that I think is interesting about an article like that specifically is that we do want that context, but we need to be able to remove our emotional selves from it and remove it from ruining our day, right? I want the context that this is happening, but I might not want all of the FUD that comes with it.
Yeah. I mean, fear sells, right? Fear, the media, social media in particular, that the viral nature of things is driven more so by fear than by positivity in any way. And so I think any article, any title needs to be taken somewhat with a grain of salt and say, okay, if this isn't a complete hyperbole of what the actual situation is, which it most likely is, where on that spectrum does it lie? Like, are they exaggerating the point for click purposes? Is the title amazing from a clickbait perspective, but no substance? It's just important, I think, to, again, critical thinking. It's a good phrase to wrap up the call, or to wrap up the stream for today. Is just, let's put that hat on and not take everything as if it's true, especially in an environment that's driven by pseudo anonymity. I mean, a lot of our crypto influencers it could be some 12-year-old kid sitting in a basement using ChatGPT to come up with sophisticated posts that they actually don't know to be true. Like,
don't talk about yourself like that, Jamie. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do have one other one just to kind of take us on the other side, if it's interesting.
Beauty.
Yeah.
Beauty.
So this next one is Cointelegraph, and it's about U.S. lawmakers. It just came out yesterday, and the SEC's role in crypto regulation. The reason I wanted to bring this one forward is that yesterday we talked about regulation of it, and if you go back and take a look at that episode, JD has some wonderful things to say about how we can approach regulation and have a good attitude about it. But what's interesting about this article is that it is, again, a lot of context, a lot of things that we want to know, a lot of interesting things about regulation. But there is a lot of finger pointing that the SEC hasn't stepped up soon enough and isn't providing guidance. And the reason that that's interesting to me is that the DeFi world, many people are still on the opposite end, wanting there to be no regulation. So if you're anti-government, you're going to read the article and already be upset that they're doing something wrong, but they might actually be doing the thing that you wanted them to do.
By doing nothing. Yeah, I mean, so first of all, for anybody watching right now, the purpose of these streams, every stream, is not going to just be regulation, of course. But right now, that's kind of the world we're living in. That the news cycles have been dominated by regulatory / enforcement, types of environments. So I think the challenge here, and what's really difficult for people to understand it, like whether you're the SEC or legislators or government or private industry, the challenge is there's no one, like the SEC doesn't make the laws, they don't make the regulations, they enforce them. So you need Congress and you need lawmakers to pass laws that then the SEC can follow now, or any other regulatory body. The challenge really is that there are no guidelines. Like, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg. Which comes first? Can you have the SEC saying, here's some guidelines we want you to follow, and if it goes well, lawmakers are going to put those into law? No, that's not usually how it goes. Usually they make laws and then the SEC enforces them, and we figure out after the fact whether they were good or bad laws, and whether it did what we expected. But I think, again, just to reiterate my point, like, regulators aren't the bad guys here. That they've been framed as that, and it's really easy to jump into that camp. I mean, again, we're all really, really good armchair quarterbacks. It's really easy for me to sit here and say, hey, this is what I think Gensler should do. But I'm not Gary Gensler, and I have no idea what competing demands. It's really easy for us to sit here and say, oh, they're in the pocket of the big banks, or they're this, they're that, they're the other thing. There's probably some truth to most of those claims, but likely not. It's not absolute. Like, it's not like Gensler's sitting there knowingly trying to screw over the crypto industry to defer to traditional finance and the incumbents. Like, maybe there's a little bit of, like, there's a tinge of that in their philosophical approach, but I think we all need to stop jumping to extreme conclusions on either end, whichever end of opinion you fall on. It's likely not either polar opposite.
So when you read the news, do you take it all contextually, or do you get all riled up and like shake your newspaper?
Have we met? Of all of our partners, I am by far the most emotional. So I am surely not immune to this. Like, I get fired up sometimes about some things. I think a good rule of thumb is, read something, and before you form a strong opinion, just give it a minute. Like, just if you read something today that seems catastrophic, just before you do anything, generally speaking, maybe not catastrophic. If it's catastrophic, you might have to act. But if when you read something, if it's like, this could kind of suck, let's just give it 12 to 24 hours to figure itself out. More often than not, I think, you end up finding out something closer to the real truth, 24 hours later, once the story has kind of circulated a bit and people that have intimate knowledge have responded by saying, no, that's not true. Usually 24 hours later, you get some version of meaningful understanding.
Amazing. Well, I'll make you a critical thinking cap that has like rhinestones on it so that you can specifically put it on when you think that you're.
And that's interchangeable with the dunce cap that you made me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also the Pepe suit. They're all one and the same.
Yeah.
Thank you for going through the news with me today, JD. I think it's a good exercise to look at our approach and understand where we're coming from.
Absolutely. And hopefully it provides context for, when we do talk about stories, that's how we're approaching them. That's how we're trying to think about it, is to take a step back and say, okay, we're probably not going to have the immediate breaking news of the day, but most likely we'll have kind of thought about it and waited to see what the general consensus was around most things. And hopefully for our viewers and people that are following the streams, you get a much better understanding without having to read 10,000 articles yourselves. Then we all win. Anyways, happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Everybody kick some ass. We'll talk to you. Go FUD yourself. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern.